Welcome to the R.I.F.T Network, which shows 7 days a week from 8 o'clock p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The shows such as the R.I.F.T, Low Talk Radio, The Hollywood Connection, Just Short and Crazy, Knowledge from Behind the Veil, Nightmares Radio, Awakening the Unknown, The Blood Trucker, and the cooperative show Night Visions. And now for your featured show.
The secrets of the universe are yours to keep. Knowledge from behind the veil on the R.I.F.T Network. Wednesday at 9 p.m. Let's uncover what lies behind the veil.
Good evening, good morning, whatever you may be. This is Anand Celeste and Renee Odell with our very good friend and one of our favorite authors, Jared Hertz. Hi, guys.
Hi. Good evening. Good to hear your voice again. It's been about a month or so. A nice reunion.
Yes, it is. We went from the topic of CERN and other interesting, how may I put this? Other interesting subjects into the thought-mediated spaces, meditation, how the modern man finds their inner Zen. That is very interesting, and I'm going to tell you why. It is very interesting because most people that think about meditation, they think that you have to go into a monastery or an ashram in India and sit yourself for 5-10 hours with your feet crossed, which by the way, that hurts, to try to find quiet in their minds. So for us here in the West, I think that it's not next to impossible, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult to actually find a quiet space, a quiet time to actually gather our thoughts and try to figure out who we are. And in that sense, I think it's very important that for those people that are trying to find that inner peace and try to change their life, that I think that it's very possible that they're trying to figure out how they can do that. Have you ever meditated, Jared?
Yes, quite a lot, and I agree with you. You know, at first it's very daunting because I think here in the West we're very activity and very goal-oriented in our activities. And so we think it's something we have to do, and we think we can will it into being. And really, it's more of a process of just allowing ourselves to come back to who we truly are. And in a less vague sense, and being more concrete about it, it's really not what you do, but your level of casualness about what you experience and feel here and now in your mind and in your body. And toward that end, when you become less performance and goal-oriented and just more conscious of being in the moment, it can be a very rewarding thing, rewarding spiritually, It can be rewarding and focusing on a task at hand ultimately, or even with regard to just lowering your blood pressure or getting healthier. So there's a lot of benefits, both secular and spiritual, to meditation, because a quiet mind has a chance to explore its full potential.
That is absolutely true. And how about you, Renee? I'm afraid to ask you that question. Have you ever meditated?
I meditate when I cook.
That is a good way of meditating.
I cook.
Yeah, you get into a trance.
And
Yeah.
now, my mouth got me in trouble earlier this week over cooking.
How did your mouth get you in trouble? I can't believe it.
No, I'll tell you. My husband told me that he was fat only because I was such a good cook. So I, being me, popped off and said, well, I can start cooking badly. That's no problem. And he got mad at me. I couldn't believe it. He got mad at me because I told him I could start cooking badly and it wasn't a problem.
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh.
Well,
You know,
my
I
mouth
think
about
it's
cooking got in trouble.
See, what's nice about your approach, though, Renee, is that number one, the activity of being focused on the cooking is itself a meditation. But even if the meditation goes badly, there's still something to enjoy afterwards. You know, I meditate to YouTube videos and
Yes.
YouTube soundtracks. There's nothing left over but a dead battery on my cell phone.
Actually, it's
Exactly.
awesome that you actually mentioned that, because that is today, nowadays, is one of the number one ways of actually us Westerners meditating using YouTube. Guided meditations.
It is incredible.
Yes, it is. It is life changing. It's just that, and using, for example, 450 megahertz beats and things like that. I think those are the kind of tools that people are using nowadays to breach that gap between not being able to stand still, not being able to focus and concentrate. And I think it is an amazing tool that 50 years ago people didn't have, especially in the 60s when we have all those gurus and you have to go to a specific place to try to find your inner Zen, your inner Buddha, I guess, or your Christ-like Zen. Now we can find it in our own homes. Before, and I can say when I was little, one of the places that I would go to actually meditate was church. And when it was empty, when the church was empty, that was one of the places that I would go to actually meditate and think about all the things that my little mind would find too overwhelming. But nowadays, you don't even have to go outside. You can take your iPod or your YouTube or your cell phone and just listen to music or some guided meditation. And I think that is a very powerful tool, especially when things are so stressful. When every time that you open your Facebook or even watching the news and the news feeds and all of that is all negative. And that is overwhelming. I found a study that apparently in one day a person can receive more stress and more negative input than in a whole lifetime, 25, 35 years ago. That is scary.
Mm-hmm.
It is very scary.
You're right, yeah.
And
you know the scariest part is that even back then, people dealt with stress differently.
Yep.
You know, it was like, oh, there's stress, you know, maybe, I don't even think stress was a word.
Mm.
But let's say a working man, he had his bills, he had his nagging little wife, bratty kids, all put stress on people today. Back then it was different. The kids wasn't such a brat. They didn't want everything. They didn't bring home the drama that kids do because it wasn't there.
Yeah, that
Well,
is
there was a
true.
great meditation teacher from Britain, I believe, Watts.
Alan
And the
Watts?
whole advent of Alan Watts,
Oh
the
my God, he's my
whole
favorite.
well, actually, he came up with some very memorable quotes. They were practical, and they made a lot of sense. One of them was, to get your mind and body balanced in the morning, you can sit up in bed and meditate for 2 hours, chanting Om, or you can start the day with 2 good screwdrivers, and either way, you'll get where you need to be. I felt the latter was a better way, but then again, driving to work. There's so many different things out there, and I think we're living in an era where there's a confluence of factors that really facilitate some form and some ability to apprehend the benefits of meditation. And easily to do it. So one of them, I would say, like on YouTube, just a guided meditation is somebody with a nice hypnotic voice that puts you through some basic breathing and body relaxation exercises, but they're able to capture your focus and still your mind a little bit because their voice itself is very calm. The images and things they say are very soothing. The music is nice. And with someone talking to you and guiding you, it's very helpful. And in fact, I know some mental health professionals that oftentimes will tell their patients, this is the way you might want to start, because meditation or any meditation practice can be daunting. Now, what you mentioned with the hertz and using sound frequencies is a relatively new technology. And I think that's really worth talking about as well, because I've used it, and it is awesome. It will take you, it's like the steroids of meditation. It will take you so fast, so far. It can bring you to the altered states of consciousness that Buddhist monks will spend 30 years, in a monastery trying to attain. You plug in some headphones, you put in a CD, or download some MP3 program, and voila, you're in that state. It's an induced state. So it's not something that you would obtain normally, but it can also train your mind and condition it to reach and access, those very comfortable states of mind, and basically based on 4 separate states: the alpha or dream-like daydreaming state, the theta or dream-like state, the deeper delta state, and then also the beta, which is the consciousness. And there's a 5th state they call gamma, which is more like very hyper-frenetic spiritual realization. But the point is, when we talk about these alpha or theta or delta states, they're more predominant. In other words, we never solely have theta waves. We never solely have alpha waves. And they're different frequencies along the spectrum that are measured electromagnetically with an EEG machine. And the way they deciphered this was they took some monks who were very good at meditation. They hooked up an EEG machine, and they saw the levels at which these brain waves were moving when these guys were in deep meditation. But it's a mixture usually. In other words, you may have a sudden insight spiritually while balancing a checkbook, where you might be using a very full, hyperactive beta consciousness, the stuff we use to function in our everyday lives. The alpha, the more dreamlike, the more relaxed state, the daydreaming state, again, that's not a predominant, the only state. You have theta, you have beta. It's always a combination, but we might call it an alpha dominant state or a theta dominant state. And as we get deeper and deeper into, let's say, relaxation or sleep, the mind slows down, the waves slow down, and you can actually feel the mind being pulled or sucked or to a much more relaxed way of being. And that in turn will train, you can train yourself that way. It's much the same way that you could lift weights and become stronger. So the mind, like anything else in the body, can be trained for alternate states of consciousness. So there's the YouTube guided, stuff where they guide you to meditations, and then there's these CDs which have like soundtracks, which are, excuse me, they're absolutely amazing. And I encourage you and everybody else to use them. They're very good. The one disadvantage I found, though, with it is can't always get that bang for the buck for it. In other words, you can't always get that deep into meditation. Sometimes the body accepts it, and sometimes it doesn't. So it's really a hit and miss proposition, but it's still very helpful.
It is an interesting experience.
I have a question of both of y'all. And I'm going to put it this way, so y'all bear with me. What do you think of herbal meditation? How can I put that?
That's a wonderful way to put drug-induced or hallucinogen-induced meditation.
I did not want to say that word.
This is why we're here. We have to talk about those things. You want to know about the ayahuasca. You want to know about the weed or pot or everything in between, the different teas.
Sylvia, peyote.
LSD in the 60s.
One. So what do y'all think of them? I mean,
Well, I'm thinking about the whole movement again in the 70s I was referring to, the Alan Watts movement, and then you had the Harvard professors experimenting with acid.
Yes,
and
they
all
did.
The states of consciousness. What was his name? Not Krishna Das, but there was Ram Das, who wrote that famous Eastern philosophy and meditation book, Be Here Now. Mm-hmm. And then later other people followed him. Amongst them was the great yoga chant musician Krishna Das, who read the book and went to India to find Ram Dass' teacher. But the guru over there in India, Karoli was his name, as I recall, he knew about these types of herbs, and he says you really don't need these herbs to get there if you have the essence or the right frame of mind yourself. And he gave them a specific name. I forget what he called them, but he knew about them. And he says, yes, this is one avenue, but it's not the only avenue, and you can find it yourself. It's like anything else. I would assume it's similar to using a meditation soundtrack. It's an avenue. It can relax you. There's many good things, and obviously many shamans and natural healers enter these states using these herbs or using these hallucinogens, peyote or mushrooms. So I think it's really a matter of what your personal choice is, and again, the only thing I say with a caveat, obviously, a lot of these stuffs are prohibited. And they can also perhaps cause some cellular damage or DNA damage. So it's been said, I don't know. Not necessarily weed and marijuana, which is legal in some states now, or used for medical purposes, but the more stronger hallucinogens. It's hard to really tell what's in them. Maybe a meditation person might want to start their journey with a simple CD or a guided meditation on YouTube. But certainly, like Alan Watts had said, 2 screwdrivers will put you in an altered state of consciousness pretty quickly. And you don't have to spend all the effort.
But that's okay.
Well, you might get a, God forbid, DWI, and you don't want to become dependent on substances unless you need them.
Exactly.
Because then you might become an alcoholic. You might say the only way I can obtain this is with 3 screwdrivers or 4, and it keeps building, or I need a Valium to do it. So it cuts both ways. On the other hand, I've known mental health professionals who said to me, I tell my patients, when you're really having a bad day, take 2 Valium, put on a movie, cry a little bit, and if that's what does the trick, so be it. So everybody has their own, their own journey, their own map.
Touche. It is interesting to say that most in those kind of cultures where shamanism is prevalent, they used mind altering or enhancers, to say the least, and to achieve a semi-quasi state of consciousness. Now, I have heard I have heard, because people have told me, that there is something called being awakened by Mother Ayahuasca. I haven't taken it. Actually, it's kind of frightening thing to actually listen to how the process works. It is a toxin, and it does really interesting things to the brain. The same thing with any other psychedelic drugs or mind altering drugs. And I have found that even with certain prescription drugs, people have actually found themselves in a very similar but very negative space. When I first started using music and noise, maybe this is something that the viewers, because I'm recording myself in Facebook, the listeners may not know, is that people that have autism or in the spectrum of autism, meaning Asperger's and such, they have a very different process when it comes to information and perception and how their receptors and how their senses work to actually process that information. Me, myself, I have Asperger's. So I am in constant bombardment of stimuli, constantly. One of the things that I found through sound is that actually it not only clears my mind, but it also takes me, like Jared said, to this other state of awareness. And I'm not gonna lie, I tried one that the frequency was not mine, let me put it that way. And it took me really quick and really crashing into a very, not a panicky state, but it was very difficult to actually distinguish what was going on and what my mind and my senses were perceiving. In other times, I have meditated with my son. And sometimes I would tell him, let's do this for 10 minutes. And when everything is said and done, 3.5 hours have passed. So it is.
Wow.
Yes. And we didn't notice at all. And it's using those tools when it comes to psychedelics. It's incredible that you mentioned Alan Watts, because he participated in a study in the 60s to actually see what was the effects of the brain when LSD was introduced as a medical thing to actually explore and to calm down people that had chronic depression, social anxiety disorder, and all of those illnesses, to see how would they react. And ironically, it did change the chemistry of the brain. It brought people to a whole new state, even if it was for a couple of minutes, to a whole new state of acceptance. And they could work whatever they were going through into a more plausible and more, that they were more comfortable with type of scenario. That really,
yeah.
oh no, that's okay. I was very surprised by that. I have never been an advocate for drugs, and that really shut me up. And I said, maybe I should look into this a little further. But I have.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, though.
Yes, it is.
I just wanted to check, because the thing that moved Ram Dass, and he was known as a professor at Harvard under a different name, and the name escapes me, and I'm trying to remember it, but he was a psychology professor. He's ultimately dismissed from Harvard. It was Harvard. And there was him and somebody else. I forget the name, and it just escapes me. But he left Harvard to search for a permanent high, a permanent state of altered consciousness, because the drugs wear off, the acid wears off.
Yes, it does.
And then what do you do? And their aftermath, suffered a massive. Now maybe he would have suffered a massive stroke anyway, but eventually later in life he suffered a horrific stroke. And then there's anecdotal and maybe even medical evidence that, using acid can alter our chromosomes and DNA and our abilities to reproduce. And a lot of people who it was used on them at the UCLA to overcome anxieties and other things claimed that they had suffered, the horrors of birth defects with their children. I don't know if this is true or not, but my point is that there's that certain legacy that one might have to fear. Now, the difference is if we just went with the simple YouTube, or we went with the simple entrainment, as they call it, where you put on headphones and listen to a soundtrack, which can be very pleasant, I don't think there's a lot of residual damage that can be done unless you maybe deafen yourself, God forbid, by putting on the headphones too loud. And in addition, some people have had some very bad psychotic reactions to LSD or hallucinogenic drugs where they had the bad trips and it haunted them forever. So, I say it's probably a very slippery slope. And I'm not sure, again, even the ones who used the acid, in the end, they went east and they went to find teachers and they wrote books about it because they couldn't maintain that godly state, that euphoria that they so badly wanted to keep experiencing. I'm now doing a lot of studies on the Beatles and their music, and apparently they also look to find something along those lines as well. Now, do you have to find God or have some, megalithic experience, to make meditation worthwhile? It's like saying, can I win a $50 lottery ticket, or do I have to win $250 billion to make it worthwhile? And I'm submitting that, as I reach my mid-50s, just general benefit of getting a good night's sleep, of feeling at peace with myself. That's worth a lot. And I'm not seeing a good night's sleep. I used to store it in on, I want to find God. I want to experience my soul awareness. I want to branch out and touch, Now I'm a lot less ambitious. Now it's like if I can avoid having restless legs and I can sleep tonight, it's a good thing. And although my goals may be less lofty, in the end, perhaps maybe the meditation is more meaningful and more powerful because it impacts the day.
Exactly. Everybody listens to music. It's just that everybody has a different taste and they're attracted to different rhythms. And one of the things that, and I know this is going to sound a little odd, I'm still a huge fan of gospel music. Huge fan, ever since I was a little girl. And that was my beat. I used to love everything that had to do with gospel music. But I started noticing that every time that I would listen to gospel music, I would end up crying. I would actually end up crying. And it wasn't a bad thing. It was more like a cleansing thing. People use music when they're angry, when they're anxious, when they just want to get something out through the voice of another, of how they feel. And maybe that is one of the reasons why it's so powerful. Sorry. Another way that people actually... Yes?
My oldest was very hyperactive. And to calm him down, I'd tell him to go turn on the radio, and I had one radio set to rock and roll, which is what I enjoy. But I had another one set to classical, Beethoven, Bach, and all that. And I'd tell him to go turn on the radio. He'd go turn that on, and for him, it was like instant stop. He would actually sit down and listen and do his own little meditative things. Whatever it took to calm him down, the music helped. The classical music helped.
I think you make a great point, though, Renee, and that's that here's a little boy who probably was never taking a meditation class or looked it up online or anything else, and he just knew that he wanted to calm himself or felt the need to calm himself. And he instinctively went towards this classical music. and it did the trick. So, I would speculate, and I've often done so, that there's some innate drive within us. In the same way that we search for meaning, or we search for a creator, or we search for a mate, or a partner, or a friendship, connection in society, I think there's an innate part of us that wants to find ourself, the capital S self, true self, within, and to get quiet. And I think that whether we attend a formal yoga class with instructions or guides, or whether we just are little boys throwing on classical music, we will find that. We'll search it out and find it the same way that an animal will look for fresh water or fresh foliage to feast on. So I think it's essential to our human experience, in survival. And that's a great point, too. And I know that I had one friend who was a PhD, and she says, I just sit in the bathtub, and the feeling of my body relaxing in the water is enough to me. Because at that point in my life, I was taking all these courses from companies like Sounds True, and they would give you 60 hours of tapes and lectures, and the thing would cost $140, and then you get like a library of tapes. And, I felt, okay, if I master every tape and listen to every tape and take notes and do the raisin meditation, where you taste the raisin and meditate on the flavor, you're going to become enlightened. And I didn't get enlightened. And I probably am still not enlightened. But the point is, you don't need all that extra jazz. It's like saying, I want to take a nap. All right, well, you lie down, you nap, and your body tells you what to do. Close your eyes, get quiet, and do it. So I think a lot of meditation is we're wired for it. Just as we're wired to have a concept of a higher being or a higher reality. And just as we're wired in many different ways to do some basic function. I think we get away from it in a very hyperactive, frenetic society where everything, as you mentioned, is so fast and so busy.
Yep.
And also so lonely, by the way, because we talked about the fact of how people. There was a study. I don't even know if it's true enough. There was a psychologist on television who was talking about all the antidepressant drugs, and he says they're not good or bad. He says some of them are effective, but he says the real problem is not the medicine, and it may not even be the patient. It's a society that's failing us as individuals, because we're only as good as our society. If our water supply goes lousy, we'll probably die of thirst, right? And if there's no fresh food to eat, most of us would die of lack of food. In the winters, there's no fuel oil. We freeze to death. So he says, in the old days, 30, 40 years ago, if you asked somebody how many people would help you if your whole life fell apart and you were in dire straits, most people would say 2, 3, 4, or 5 different people would help you. He says today, if somebody says one person that they could depend on, they're lucky. Now, I'm not sure if it was an exaggeration or not, but he says that's the dire straits we're living in.
Yep.
And so based upon that hyperactive or hyper-frenetic, hypersexual, multiple image, social media society, we then move towards what? Alienation, really, and loneliness. And one of the great cures for a lot of that is just to get quiet. And I find a lot of times just say, okay, I'm okay who I am.
Hello?
Hello. I am on.
Hi, sweetie. So I'm going to put you on.
Okay, because I'm not.
Too close enough to Jersey, yeah.
You're closer to New York City. We'll put it that way. Okay, you might live in an apartment. I don't know. How long have you lived there?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm on Long Island. I've lived here most of my life. It's age 5.
No, in the home you're living in now. How long have you lived there?
In the actual house, since 6. So that would be about 12 years.
And how well do you know your neighbors?
Not that well, a little bit, but not very well.
It's New York, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, Long Island. He lives in Long Island.
In Long Island. I have family from New York living in the same place for 30
I mean,
years.
I'm an anomaly, though. You know, I just kind of go to work, and I find myself oftentimes just work, writing, you know, going to the gym, whatever. I'm a very goal-oriented person, so it would be difficult to really judge my personal experience, which could be very,
Well,
very
no, what I'm
anecdotal.
saying is that so many people now go to work and come home, and they stay in their home. They hardly ever go outside except for maybe to mow grass, if they've got grass. They never run over to their neighbors to borrow sugar anymore.
No, they don't.
I had a neighbor that asked
They
me for an
never
egg.
talk over the back. There you go. But they never talk over the back fence no more either.
Hmm.
You know, when we were kids growing up, and we all grew up in various parts of the country, I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
we always had the neighbors that would holler out the door when we was doing something wrong. I'm telling your mama.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
if something was going on and we needed a little help, somebody came out of their house and helped us.
Yeah.
We don't have that no more. We have, ooh, my neighbor's talking to me. I better run inside. And
You're
that's
right.
scary.
Right? You know, we find our friends. Somebody says, I have 3,700 friends. I say, really? You know, on social media. How many people go out in the streets and really have a friend, or go out to a local, you know, barber shop or something? You know? So I think the concept.
I had a neighbor one time, a really good neighbor, when my oldest, because there's 5 years difference between my oldest and my middle. When my oldest was little, I had a neighbor that would come babysit him. And now if I had a 4-year-old little kid in my house, I'm going, oh my God, I don't want none of my neighbors to babysit them. I don't know them.
Well, guys, we have a caller. So, hello?
Hello. Hi, Renee. And hello. And hi, hon. You know who this is, right?
It's Kimmy.
Voice sounds familiar. Hi, Kimmy. How are you guys doing?
We're doing
Pretty
good.
I seen your picture the other day. Yeah, I saw You're beautiful. Honey, it's just taking forever. I had it done to the middle of my back, and I thought it, and it just had to go because it was falling out, chemical burns, and all kinds of fun stuff. Well, you're still beautiful.
Exactly.
Thank you. It's one of those things where there's something about the spirituality. If you have long hair and the sun hits it, it hits the roots of your head and it hits the tips of your hair. Well, like when it got cut off, within a matter of a week, I started feeling odd. Not because it was gone, but my energy levels and things changed because of it, which is, it's never happened to me like that before, but I haven't had it cut me like that. So it kind of feels like a low spot. I have to keep my hair kind of short. Not as short as yours, but I do have to keep it short because I find myself when it's long, being in town and people wanting to pet me.
What?
Well, they just come by and they pet my hair and I'm going, what? Quit touching me. I had a guy thrown out of a grocery store one time for following me around trying to pet my hair. But yeah, so my hair comes in really thick and full. And what burns it, well, when someone else I had do it, they're supposed to be able to do this for 20 years or more. She got kind of sloppy and ended up putting chemical burns in certain spots in my head, and it all happened on the left side of my head. So the left side of my hair is like takes forever to catch up with the right side. I'm like, oh my God. So, but that's, weird hair and all that, and it's gonna come back. It just seems like it took me forever. But I thank you both for saying I'm beautiful, and that's just what I say.
I'm curious, Kimmy, with all the stuff that has happened, and you know exactly what I mean, of all the crazy stuff that have happened the last couple of weeks. How do you unwind? What would be your best advice when it comes to meditation, unwinding, finding a quiet spot in this crazy, crazy, crazy day to day?
The only piece I can find, because I'll be honest with everyone, I don't lie anymore, but I cannot sit still long enough to meditate. Per se, as you listen to music and you go into that zone, I do it through a form of just silence, where there's no noise, no nothing. And when I'm in that space, in my own little space, that's my form of, there's so many different forms of meditation. I mean, daydreaming, that's a form of meditation.
Yes, it is.
If you can, in that trance-like mode, you can go away from whatever is going on around you and connect with your inner self. I do a lot of daydreaming, or as Nick calls it, space thinking. I don't know why he calls it that. And I'll do that, or I will, if I get to it, and see, the thing is, I don't have a car, right? I find it very, very, very relieving to get in my car and just go for a drive when things are too much.
That's the American way.
Because
Get in your car and go for a drive.
And if the wind is blowing through my hair and in my face, I'm getting the element of air. So I don't feel like I'm overwhelmed as much. I don't feel like I'm suffocating. And that throws me into sort of a meditative state. Or I can go, I love it in summer and spring, I go to the woods and I find myself at peace there. I can meditate there. Because I can tune into every little sound that's around me. The birds, the trees shifting, the leaves moving. What I call the trees speak to or the wind speaks to the leaves. Because if you really tune in, you can hear that. You can hear whispers through the wind, literally. As crazy as it sounds, it can be done. That's how what I call escape or meditate. Because
I have a question for all three of you. What do you guys think?
I didn't do it.
What do you guys think about virtual reality as a form of escaping reality, as a form of unwinding?
It trips me out. When I do a virtual reality thing, it makes me dizzy. It makes me feel funny. Like, I don't know how to
I get car sick.
You get car sick?
I do. I do.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. It's like, okay, for instance, we took the kids to Chuck E. Cheese several years ago. They're older now. And they wanted me to get on a roller coaster virtual reality ride. And I did. And I tell you what, it was worse than riding the actual thing itself.
How
Because
about
I literally had jumped sick because I got sick.
how about you, Renee?
But I mean,
I get motion sick.
You get motion sickness?
Because a lot of the virtual reality, you don't have an exact focal point. You know, you're doing this and you're doing that and you're turning and my mind says, oh my God, stop.
Wow. How about you,
And
Jared?
I'll actually get sick.
I really don't know if I've ever really done virtual reality. Like I've done like plane and train simulators on the computer. I don't know if that's the same thing.
it's similar.
Somewhat.
It's similar, but I think this is more like I think I see it in a mall where like you're literally like a 360 type experience, and
Yeah.
I've never really done much of it. I have to be honest. I mean, probably the closest I can say is like the train simulators or the plane simulators, and I would be for it. I mean, I think if it would produce the desired effect or euphoria or reaction or excitement. You know, I mean, like,
some it's good.
My first,
I love it, but I can't. I can't. It's like Renee, it makes me sick.
my first experience with virtual reality was actually the Halo game.
Are you
I've
kidding
heard
me?
people use it.
No, my cousin brought his over to my house to play with my son and my ex-husband.
Mhm.
And you would have swore to God I was pregnant with morning sickness. I could not sit there and watch it. And I wasn't even playing.
I was going to say the privilege, but because it wasn't mine, but I had the opportunity to actually do the virtual reality thing accompanied with sound. And I had the goggles on, and it was like Jared says, the 360 thing, and it had audio, and it was a beach. It was just the beach and the sand and the whole 9 yards. And you can actually hear the ocean, and you can actually hear the waves breaking into the sand. It was very interesting. It was very interesting.
Now, we bought my son-in-law one of them with the mask for Christmas this year. It hooks up to his cell phone. And he loves it. He's got a golf game on there. He just plays all the time.
I've heard from other people, because I'm one of those I ask a lot of questions. If I don't understand something, or if I don't feel the same way they do about it, I want to understand how they're feeling about a certain thing. Well, someone else I know has had one of those virtual reality masks on, across the skies and stuff, and had the sound with it. And after 2 hours of him playing a game on it, he started getting a headache. At first he had the euphoria, and then he felt really good and enjoying it. And then 2 hours of doing it, he said it gave him a massive headache, so he had to put it down. Then he didn't even pick it up the next day because he was afraid it was going to happen again. But that's just it's different for everyone.
That's true. That's true. In the past, and people still do it. That when, like I mentioned before about meditating in church, people have very similar experiences when they go to nature, when they go to a museum, when they go to a cathedral. Something that takes your breath away, that actually puts you in that space of thought, in that space of self-reflection.
Now, see, like, when I was growing up, they have some amazing places in north central Arkansas. The heart of the Ozarks, you pull up, you can walk anywhere, nobody's going to say, oh, you're on my land, whatever. You can walk through the woods barefooted, for the most part, and just enjoy it. And here in Michigan, where it's beautiful, but it's not the same. I had to get a park permit for the state parks put on my tag so I could go enjoy the state parks here. Because they charge you. And it's, as long as it's on my tags every year, it's $7 a year as opposed to $20 at the gate. But I can go to any state park in the state for free. Use their camping stuff, camping areas and all that for free for $7 a year. And I like going barefooted out in nature. That's just my thing.
I have to do it too. And the only downfall for me is I'm highly allergic to any kind of bees. So if I go barefooted, I can't go around with little white clothes because they are bees, and I'm one of those that where I get asphyxiated or my throat will shut off. And I I have to be careful when I do that. Now, if it's just grass and there's no little white flowers laying around in the clovers and stuff, I'm good to go. Because that can make you, it grounds you, one. Two, it makes you become one with nature and with the earth. So, and that in itself can bring you down to earth and push you into the other space.
I have another question. With all the crazy stuff that it's going on in this country, and believe me, it's just too crazy. Do you guys think it's a good call for some schools and private and public to, instead of detention, to use meditation to try to reach those children who are having issues, and to integrate in the curriculum a meditation class?
I support that completely.
I think,
Videos
yeah.
of it. It's done wonders for the children. It does calm them and it does help them.
There is a school
There's a school.
in West Baltimore that they are doing that. I think. Yes, it's in West Baltimore. That they're using, instead of detention, sending kids to a quiet space to stretch, do yoga, and practice deep breathing. And including goofing around every once in a while, but it's more like to clear their minds and to meditate or to think about where they are and especially in whatever they're doing. And I think that it has yielded very positive results. Do you think this could be a good thing to implement in New York, Jared?
I think it'll be great. And I think that you need to have the ongoing support for it.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, I have done criminal law. I don't do a lot of it now, but, you come across people, nonetheless, who've, gone through some form of incarceration. So they're in a controlled environment. So they might not normally come across people who meditate. They might come across people who, socialize, drive cars, go to work, whatever. But people who actually stop what they're doing in a controlled setting and everybody meditates. You really need that controlled setting. So schools are ideal because they're institutional in nature. Hospitals, jails, and they usually express the fact that it was a very positive experience. Then once they were released, or once they got paroled or whatever, or they bailed, obviously their spiritual pursuit of the meditation came to an end. But not a lot of people argue with the results. And yes, in an institutionalized setting like a school, you could have it happen. What I fear happening is that the lawyers get involved and the Board of Ed gets involved or whatever it is, and suddenly they say this is some encroachment on freedom because you're making someone engage in an activity, whether it's religious or not, or it's spiritual or not, and before long, the ACLU or someone will bring a lawsuit against the school and their insurance companies and just don't meditate anymore. So I wonder about how long that will last. Excuse me?
It could be put in like
it could be your physiological aspect. The problem is its association with with spirituality and religious practice. And there is an affiliation and association. And these days in our society, even the hint of some sort of connection usually becomes a liability. So, for example, if I was working at some school board, whether it's New York or California or anywhere, I would probably have to get the permission of the parents of the children. Then you have to give certain warning signs because apparently meditation, 1 out of every million, if a child has some sort of trauma or psychological condition, it can bring bad things to the surface. So I love the idea. I just wonder if, in the end, the legal process that we enjoy so much in our country won't just retard the whole thing altogether.
This is an interesting argument.
Too many spiritual and religious overtones. Maybe I speak as a cynic. But,
no, because it is true. Legally, there are certain things.
There's a school that has an amazing program in Bentonville, Arkansas. And what they do, instead of clubs, like BMX club or chess club or whatever, their electives are the clubs. They have an amazing turnout for a yoga club.
Yeah, yoga's wonderful.
Actually, yoga is wonderful, and it teaches the kids a lot of wonderful things. A lot of relaxation and how to handle problems, be it bullying or just everyday kid problems. But they have an amazing turnout for that class.
This is the thing that I don't understand. I don't
They have
get
a Nintendo elective.
I don't get why it's still legal in some states to paddle a child, to spank a child in the classroom, but it would be illegal for them to learn techniques and how to relax. Maybe those are the things that need to be brought to the table. If people are so scared that there is going to be a religious aspect involved, maybe they should be the ones that should get educated. Because
You're right. And I think, you know what I'm analogizing to, though? It's like, here they have a school lunch program where they're serving peanut butter on bread or peanut butter and jelly, which, unless you're allergic to peanuts or to wheat or to gluten, it doesn't seem to be terribly harmful to give a kid a peanut butter sandwich, right? At least we were growing up, it was available, you could eat it, no big deal. No, they stopped it because they said certain cultures don't have access to a lot of wheat and certain cultures don't have access to a lot of peanut butter. This becomes a cultural insult to certain people. Therefore, instead of a lawsuit, we'll just discontinue all peanut butter and bread. It sounds crazy, but this actually happened, I believe, in California or Oregon.
Wow.
So we can read it. You look it up on the internet or whatnot. And then the school board just stopped it. They said no more peanut butter and no more bread and whatever. The reality of it is then you would say, well, somebody felt a cultural slight because they came from a tradition where meditation is not promoted. Whereas somebody who, other people would hail from a culture, tradition, or religion where meditation was promoted. And because of the religious overtones, you're now mixing, church and state. It's an awful thing. I would be so against it, but it's not, if you're already outlawing peanut butter in a school district for lunch, and not just for kids who are allergic, the next step is probably something like meditation. So I love the whole idea. But I just wonder how viable it would be. And sooner or later, you get the ACLU or someone jumping in, bringing a lawsuit, and that would be the end of it. Because the cost of defending a lawsuit would drive the program right out of existence.
that is very tragic.
But again, as I said, the people who have experience, an institutionalized setting is perfect for it because, everybody's doing it at a specific time. They dedicate themselves to it, and nobody really reports too many adverse effects. Nobody says, I did a meditation class and I broke my leg or something. It just doesn't happen.
See, schools wouldn't like me for a superintendent because I'm the attitude of, well, if you don't like this, there are so many other things your child could be doing. They don't have to do that. It's not forced on them.
But then if
they
your child doesn't do it, then does he feel excluded? See, but there's always, the sad part about our ridiculous system, and I can say that as a lawyer, the sad part that happens is then the people who elect to opt out of a program or elect to opt out of a class, then they say the compulsion to make them opt out of the class makes them feel different and less than. And therefore, it's a bad thing anyway and harmful to the child. When probably the most harmful thing to the kid is just saying we have all this nonsense going on in the first place. Let him sit. We did meditation. We didn't even know we had a teacher who would do 5 or 10 minute centering exercises for every social studies class. His name was Mr. Brett. I hope he's still alive. I think he was a deacon. And I went to the weekly high school, and he would hold a 5 to 10 minute meditation or mini meditation and relaxation before class. They probably now fire him. If he did it now, they fire him. I'm convinced, because that's what our world has become. Everything is a cultural slight. Everything has become a cultural something. Even the people that don't want to meditate, or the parents don't want them meditating, now they're different. And so, we've come across a very, very regimented. It's very sad in a way, but I think, again, the institutionalized setting is the best, because everybody's there doing the same thing. So
It sounds familiar. It sounds very familiar.
Think of it this way, guys. Us three, and Kimmy, I'm not for sure how old Kimmy is, came from a world 31?
41.
Oh, well, see, we all come from a world where sex ed was iffy. You had to get your parents' permission to attend
Didn't just run the street one.
And now it's almost a requirement.
Yeah, but you weren't allowed to run the streets, do whatever you wanted, when you wanted, and nowadays there are protection laws for the children. I'm not saying we should be able to beat our children, but there are protection laws to them as far as to how it was when we were growing up. When we were growing up, we did not test our parents, didn't push them. It was yes, ma'am, no, sir, and there was no gift to it. So it's changed quite a bit from my generation to what my children are now.
Yeah.
They're adults. Society has made it that way.
I read an article here a while back. I don't know why they banned it, but they repealed it, I guess you'd call it. Utah now, well, they used to have a lot of children, wasn't allowed outside to play without an adult. And somebody put in a study, and within the last couple of weeks, they have repealed that. And they call it now the free range law.
Excuse me?
So children can go out, free range children law.
Like chickens.
And it's where kids are actually allowed, like chickens, they're actually allowed to go outside and play and do kid things without an adult.
Oh, gosh.
I've seen it a lot in the state. I live in Indiana, and I see that often. I see little 5-year-olds out in the yard, no parents out there, playing along the sidewalk and right by the street, and I never allowed my children to even get nowhere near the sidewalk. But that was my preference. But
Honey, my grandson is 4 years old, and last summer he had gotten on the sidewalk close to the road, and I freaked out. I'm going, you get back up in this yard right now. And, it wasn't like we wasn't outside watching him. We were all outside. My stepdaughter and my husband and me, we were all watching him. But all I could see was somebody coming by and jumping that curb and hitting that kid. And I knew he'd get back up in the yard. It just freaked me out.
I've been there, seen that, and I thought, my goodness, the parents were nowhere in sight. They weren't even at the doorway watching. And there was a 3-year-old little boy and a 5-year-old little boy, and it's just running up and down the sidewalk on their little tricycles. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to get hit any given minute. And I don't want to be here to see it. And
well, guys, we're going to take a brief pause so we can go to the network sponsorship, and then when we come back, I would love to actually give our listeners a little a to-do list if they want to start meditating on their own terms, of course. on their own terms. So we'll
Do
be
not make them imagine stairs. They might have problems like me.
so we'll be right back.
I like the to-do list. I'm going to get my own pen ready.
Yes.
Because I'm always open to new ideas.
Yes.
Oh, I am too.
So let's get ready for that. That sounds like a great idea.
Go get
That's a
pen and
great
paper and be right back. And for those people listening on Facebook, sorry, come to the link so you can keep listening to the to-do list on high functioning meditation and personalized meditation. So we'll be right back.
At this time, the rest would like